session trades 100% long, or pretty much all the prices that traded were above the open price. And, generally, if not within 15 to 20 minutes of the open, you get a new high, or if it's short, you get a new low. Then you see a 5 to 10 point, 5 and dime reversal, as Barr would say. But generally, we had a pretty short open, and we had gone down, and then we had actually had some covering before the open for regular trading hours. And so as you can see, the session generally trended pretty long. You can see here in Delta, there was a consistent creep up, right? So you can see here throughout the day, positive Delta kept accruing, right? We're in a market replay right now. So this is at approximately 240, 235. You can see in the top right. So it's kind of playing as it goes. This is a cool little feature that I use frequently with Trade-Evade. But anyway, you can see here that there is Delta was pretty negative, but had been creeping up steadily, and it just flipped positive. But what's interesting about this Delta movement is that there is no or little price movement upward, right? So generally, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Delta. I use it on a regular basis, but basically what Delta is on a cumulative basis is number of ask side trades minus number of bid side trades. And now when I say an ask side trade, I'm saying that someone is buying at the ask. And when I say a bid side trade, I say someone is selling at the bid. So generally, when you have more people who are buying at the ask than you do who are selling at the bid, you will get a positive creep up at Delta. And so right now, you can see here is this continual creep up is telling me that buyers are trying very hard to keep price moving upwards, but sellers are content to unleash their inventory, right? So, I mean, not everyone operates as market orders. And so you can see here, and I'll open up the footprint in a moment here, but you can really see that sellers are content to continue adding limit sells, limit offers, as buyers continue to try and push price up. So when I think about what's interesting about something like this is that you have to think about it in the context of the day, right? So a lot of the participants, not a majority of them, but a fair number of participants are day traders like ourselves, and not very many people will swing positions into overnight or through through the gap hours of 4 to 5 Central. And so as a result, right, generally you'll have some sort of inventory correction at the end of the day if there is no further interest for higher or lower prices depending on the positioning. And so typically when I look at trades like this, a setup like this, I like to think that risk reward for a long is limited. And because you have already had so much energy being spent trying to push price up with little to no progress. And as a result, you have something that I like to call an extended buyer exhaustion, right? At some point, the day traders will need to clear out their positions. And so without a lot of organic buying, there is not a lot of incentive for day traders to continue to hold on to their positions if there is a continual sell wall, as is evident here in the profile. You can see here the profile is pretty top heavy. A lot of business has been done at the top without a lot of progress over this low volume area at 38.45 to 38.50. And so here, how I like to approach these types of trades is I like to watch the action toward the close. And generally I don't really like to trade the close, but when there's a compelling setup like this one, I like to dip my toe. And so as is pretty common for a lot of LVN behavior, when people are trying to bust the top of or something, there will always be an attempted breakout. And whether that breakout is successful or fails, I never know until after the fact, and it's pretty common for something like that. But when I want to bet on a short here with the contained risk to reward, I would like to sell into the auction, right? So if you look here, price on the DOM has kind of been trending around this 43 to 44 area, right? So I think that it will probably try, and I mean obviously hindsight 2020, but just generally looking at this, it'll probably try for a breakout, and on that breakout you can probably sell into it, put a limit order probably up at 45.50 to 46 with 2 to 3 point risk. and probably be okay for a reversal trade. And so, again, it really depends on your style here. Like, this is a pretty quick trade. I don't know if you remember, but this move happened at around 255 and 257 Central, and happened pretty quickly. So because I do have it up here, I'll probably put some limit orders in here. Let's see. I don't recall, but how far, if it went up or what happened here, but this is generally how I would approach the trade, and I would look to get, generally I do a 3 to 5 point MAE, and I try to, within 150 to 180 seconds, make the trade free, and if it doesn't, then I start looking for the exit. This is just my style. Up to, I mean, I don't know, everyone has their own different styles. I know King likes to have his 7.5 stops. You know, a lot of people like to have 5-point stops. I'm between like a 3 and 5 point type of guy, and generally you know, my clips usually about 10 to 15 lots. So when I'm playing with that size, I really like to have a good margin of safety. So I trying to achieve that as quickly as possible, because things go quickly, can go wrong very quickly. But let's watch this action here. I'm going to speed it up really quick.
Preston, quick question for you. So at this juncture in the trade, your thesis is that this has already shown enough absorption that you're comfortable setting these orders staggered like that. So you're confident in this trade, and you've seen what you need to see, and you're really just trying to let price come to you at this juncture?
Exactly, right. So I'm trying to wait to get sell into a complete auction, right? So I'm looking here at this candle at the beginning of 2 p.m. You can see that there are two very big positive delta candles, and you can see at the first candle here, where my mouse is, very clearly the price had a very good response above. And then there was even more buying pressure that was put on in the subsequent candle, and there was even less price movement. So that tells me that there is a higher likelihood of that buyers are becoming exhausted, and that sellers are reloading the ask. And so generally, this is how I would approach the trade. I don't remember what the top tick was here. But this is, whenever I'm looking at this is what I would try and do. And I don't usually try and chase that often, but I would like to sell into complete auction. So really I don't mind if I don't get filled here. And like I said, I don't like to trade late in the day. This is usually how I'd approach it. I'd be like, okay, if it tries for a breakout, I will get filled. And if it fails, then I will, you know, get paid bigly. But regardless, this is how I'd approach it. You can kind of see here, buyers are trying to get exhausted, and the liquidation is starting to happen. We're about to hit MOC. Here in about 10 seconds, and I believe that's when the waterfall really started. And so it continued for about 10 minutes for about 10 points. So, but this is generally how I'd approach it. I like to sell into the completed auction. Clearly, I was talking, wasn't really watching that much, so I didn't really get to watch it as I would like, but it's fine. I'm not worried about it. Plus, this is, you know, I hate trading Fridays at 250, because if things go poorly, you could just sour my mood for the whole weekend, and I fucking hate that. I don't know about any of you guys, but that is
100%.
That is one of the worst feelings. So
we talked about that. I was sized into this trade pretty heavily with a 42 average, and was sweating entries that you were waiting for. So I ended up taking just a few points as soon as I saw the break happen, whereas you were positioned to be able to ride this move down to where I actually had initially targeted. But because of the emotions of the trade, ended up just taking 3 points and Friday more than 4.
So hard. It is so hard to maintain composure. And like I said, I mean, this is why I ended up getting a good fill, because I think I only got filled 4 on whatever I did up here, which I clearly fucked up for this demonstration. But I think I got filled at like 44, 5, 45 for like 4 lots, and then on a bounce down here, I think around here I added another 6, and then held it for 3 to 4 points, and then let a couple ride. But again, generally for a trade like this, the conditions are, you know, general length in the session, right? You want to see prices traded up significantly, and you want to see this big delta creep, right? You can see here delta opened the session at about negative 18,000, and then it continued upward till it flipped positive, and there was barely any price movement. You can see here from the open, there was only about 20 or so points that the session gained, with 16,000 positive delta. It's not very there's not a lot of progress. And so you'll see here it'll continue dropping. So I did not. So I saw a question blip up. I did not know that was a complete auction. When I'm watching this, usually I look at the footprint. We can pull up the footprint here and take a look at that at these up here. So I like footprint because you can really see what's going on in each of the candles. And so you can see here the deep red versus the deep green. There's a lot of of ask reloading. Yeah, so here's the complete auction. Generally, so to answer the question about the complete auction, generally complete auction will have this what you can see here in the 240 candle, which has a completed auction on the top side, which means that the last price traded was all ask side and there were no bid side trades. So you can see here there were 230 ask side trades and none on the bid side at 38.45, and that was the top tick. And so see here we can kind of watch price go down. But I like to sell into these types of auctions and try and catch the movement because it generally yields better entries when I feel like an auction is going to complete. Yeah, here's where it starts to just melt right at the end. And this is when everyone is just liquidating their positions right before the weekend. And so, if you have the time frame right with the session length and then the positive delta creep and no new highs in the session, those three things are the confluence that I needed to take my trade whenever I took it. And it's usually a very very obvious to spot and good risk reward, right? I mean, obviously nothing is ever given in the world, and the market could have hit new highs if someone hit a 50,000 lot market buy for whatever reason. I don't fucking know, but generally when this happens, this is a high probability outcome. So that's pretty much it for the trade that I had to share. Those are the three things that I would look for, and you can add whatever minor things you want to, but generally when those three things happen, a liquidation break at the end of the day is quite likely. I don't know whether if it's 3 points, I don't know if it's 5 points, I don't know if it's fucking 50 points, but I know that it likely happens, and I trade what's in front of me, as as I'm sure everyone does here.
Question for you. So, this was a late day liquidation break. I mean, I heard you in the room or saw you in the room, mentioning that I think this was like several weeks running where the same sort of setup and play took place. I know we talked that this same trade, this absorption near highs at key levels took place several times during the week. How did those other setups during the week differ from this one being, Friday at 2 o'clock, if at all?
So the delta creep for this one was pretty big. I'd say I'm trying to find these other ones, but you saw I saw the delta flip and no new highs were made. Like that was like a pretty key thing for me. Like an overnight session I traded so short, and even into selling the regular hour session that had so much buying, and was only able to bring ES up 20 points. It was not able to make new highs on the overall session, and delta flipped. I was like, okay, this is a pretty high confluence trade, right? Because it just shows that that delta flip trigger is what it starts to trigger other algos, everything else as well. And even with that delta flip, it wasn't able to push price up. It was that's really what was the big differentiator for me. Let me find it here, though. I'm trying to find the other ones. Let's see. Yeah, this is Wednesday. Similar thing, not as obvious because it didn't trade pretty long, right? There was only one dip in the session on Friday, and Wednesday had a dip pretty early on in the session, then recovered, and then had this high area where price struggled and then dipped again, and then tried to go again, and generally on the second try when there's such high absorption, and still you can look at the delta candles, man, so much effort being put into trying to make this happen, and again at the end of the day with no new highs, there's another liquidation break here around 2:45 to 3, probably around the same time as on Friday. And this also happened on Monday as well. So let me find that.
So the key like visual indicator is that divergence, right? So it's higher highs in the cumulative delta and, you know, break even flat top to even lower highs in price. That's really kind of giving you that visual cue to start paying attention to the DOM and all the other things that you kind of mentioned.
Yes, if I had to boil it down to two things, that divergence between cumulative delta and price what is very key for something like this, and also the context that the session traded pretty long, right? You can see here on it's similar on Monday, right? So this is 119 open. It didn't go as long as Wednesday or Friday. It's probably, I mean, Friday was probably the highest confluence example. But you can see here again, we had another liquidation break, which was about 5-7 points here at the 37.95. If you can believe we ever traded those prices before.
Beautiful.
So this is like a very it plays on the fact that a lot of people who participate in this market are intraday traders looking to go flat at the end. Look at how the session trended, and you look at the cumulative delta versus price divergence. And it goes same for the short side. Again, we just had 3 long side examples. One was the best, obviously on Friday, but again, this is something you can add to your arsenal pretty easily. And again, obviously execution is a whole other thing, but finding these signals and the confluence of them is what will set you up for success, I believe. So thanks for your time today, everyone. I hope you found some of this helpful. Again, I'm obviously open to any questions or any comments or any criticisms as well. So always looking to get better, and I really appreciate that. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, no, thank you. And again, guys, I know we talk about this each week, but this is a perfect example of what the vision of what Sunday Study and really what kind of the vibe in the room is. Hoping that we can get content experts and just people who feel confident in the section that they're focusing on, or just have something to share. I know that there's just a ton of value in this room from that. So Preston, again, thank you for sharing this, and look forward to having you back on here sometime soon to review another trade. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Really, yeah, my pleasure as always. I mean, I really appreciate what the room is doing. Again, I'm not going to claim to be an expert trader. I'm not. I'm trying to get better every day. I certainly make money, but I'm nowhere near I want to be. So, again, if you have any criticisms or questions, please, feel free. I'll put them in the study chat room, or you can DM me as well. I don't really care. I'll do my best to answer them, and obviously take any criticism as well. So
amazing. Thanks, man. Appreciate it again. All right, guys. So that was the next part of our series on volume imprint candles on absorption trades with Preston. So thanks again, Preston. And if I'm correct here, Job, do I see you just entered?
Yes, I'm on.
All right. So we do have Job. First, man, welcome to the room. Appreciate you sharing weekly and hopefully daily updates with the room. It's been a great addition in this short period of time already. And looks like you're here to share a little bit about just volume profile in general. So listen, man, the floor is yours. You should have the ability to share screen if you're comfortable with that, or you have something to share, or if you just wanted to put some screenshots to go along with whatever you're sharing. There is a chat room as well for this channel. Just above the voice, it's near the bottom, called Sunday Study Chat, so you can also share in there as well.
Okay, outside of voice with Discord, I'm not so familiar with all the annotation tools, and so I'll just go with voice tonight.
Perfect.
So I'll be periodically throwing profiles on, and they'll be of importance because what I'm trying to convey is the basic concepts of inventory builds. This is going to keep you on the right side of which way the wind is blowing, and allow you to not only build along with the action that we're expecting, but also identify things such as a multimodal trend day or a range type day. And if you're not familiar with those types of terms, that's okay. What I'm looking at is, if you understand the volume profile, then you can dive deeper into concepts such as the DOM and delta and other forms of volume and price that allow for more specificity. But if you don't understand the volume profile alone, then I don't feel that you're ready to move to that point. And so that's why I'll keep it very simple within that channel. I really appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to just share some stuff like that. You know, there's not a lot of resources out there, in my opinion, with this. But with that being said, I posted tonight and talked about how we need to identify a level of interest. That level of interest is going to come from your previous session inventory. Find an area that was heavily respected. Place that level on your next session. Watch the volume build or volume accumulate on your profile above and below it. You're going to see a taper, or you're going to see a volume build, which is like a high volume area. A high volume area shows more of an acceptance. When we have low volume areas, that's signifying less interest. And so those areas of low interest, they can form support and resistance. Now, if we're building volume in a particular direction above a previous area of interest, we might balance for a little bit, bust through the upper low volume node, and then balance again, and then continue that sort of system until we taper. If we look at tonight's profile, what we saw is that the initial area of interest was 35. I posted that on there retrospectively. I apologize for that. I'll do a little better job of that, as there's a few different directions that I'm trying to send levels to. But when we started to build interest above that, that showed that we weren't finished. And as we came up, when we look at tonight's profile at the very top, which I'm going to post a image right now into the group chat.
And Job, I'm doing volume profiles the last several sessions, and I just did add overnight as well, so the team can follow along too.
Oh, I apologize, I didn't hear you.
Just a heads up, I am streaming my daily volume profiles, so the kind of follow along with what you were saying as well.
Okay, so yeah, so these LVNs, as of tonight, normally I just draw my own LVNs, the low volume nodes, but as of tonight, somebody brought me up to speed in Sierra Charts, and they will automatically populate that for me. That's a lifesaver. However, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to see this and how they form. And if we look at the top of this profile that I posted into the Sunday study chat room, you can see that there's a lot of volume at the top and it does not taper. If you look at the bottom, you can see that high volume node around 40, and then it tapers down just below 35. That would be a taper. And so if we were to project this, we can project this to from the low to this current high volume node around 46, 4650, and then that distance to the top end would be a target for resolution to create a Gaussian curve. The market is constantly trying to create Gaussian curves or normal distributions. And so this is how we use this to our advantage, to see where the interest is or is not. And so with this respect, everybody's looking at the market saying, we're way strung out, we're way above. However, in your session, if you're a day trader, if you're trading this even on short-term swing, you need to keep this in mind, because the market does not turn like a smart car. It turns like a cruise ship. All right? It turns very slowly. We range before we turn and go down. And so we want to take advantage of these areas of low interest and position against them. As we go up and we see the interest build, we want to allow the position to build with it. And so whether that means carrying your position through and then stopping out on an LVN as I displayed tonight in that group, or carrying it up through, keeping your position stops shortly in front of your entry and then adding to it, and then keeping a risk above your entry. What the volume profile is going to allow you to do is to gauge not only the interest, but the direction of the auction itself. We can dissect this in smaller auctions, if you can go to the page, I talked about how an electron moves around a nucleus. It rotates in circles. And so that's why I put a lot more interest on low volume areas than I do on high volume areas. And if I miss an opportunity to enter in a low volume area, then I'm completely content sitting on my hands because there will always be entries and availability. And so based upon the week plan that I'm going off of this week, above 38.32, I'm seeking long, targeting 38.60. And then there's targets above. And so as of right now, we're currently building everything above 38.32. I do not wish to fade this until I see a significant taper, in which a fade against a move above a pivot, I'll be a very small position. Once we get below an area of pivot, which I consider to be an inventory shift or shift of sentiment, then I'll begin to position heavily against that, as close to that area as possible, and utilize my LVNs above me as my risk exits. I don't know how you guys normally gauge these. Does anybody have questions?
Yeah, I'll throw one out there to you. When you say enter on LVNs, do you have a preference whether you're trying to enter low of an LVN on a move through or a retest of an LVN from above or below, I guess?
Honestly, I like a retest.
Okay.
And there are many times where I'll take a breakout, and so I can set you can set your limit order above and on an edge. And so if you look at the image that I have there, the very top blue LVN setting a as this popped above that, it created that volume. And so that volume was not there before that first breakout above that. So we have no clue there. However, before we got above the LVN at 42, we were building there. We came back below. We respected 37, and then we came back above. As we came back above, we re-entered an auction. So re-entering that area of auction allows you to grab it within that auction on a momentum type move. So that's kind of the way I view that. If you look at the volume profile before it got to where it is right now, you would have seen that there was no taper at that point, and it still signaled a higher completion into a taper.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. With respect to risk, let's say that we wanted to buy the LVN at 44.50. My risk would then be, if you look at that blue line, at 44, you see that edge. You can see the very clear edge in gold. That would be my exit. Because once it re-enters that area of volume, I would expect it to at least auction to test the opposite edge, which would be 42.25. And so I'm going to sit out that extra area of risk and allow it to resettle.
How about the breadth of an LVN? Is there anything that you glean from, say, wider LVNs, like micro ones, like I've seen even, I think, in your posts earlier this evening?
Right. So wider LVNs get a little bit more important because that is area of poor structure. When you have a well-defined LVN like we do at 44.50, that is an area of significant support. When you have a wide LVN, that is an area that can potentially fill and create an LVN of more significance, but in the meantime, you're going to catch some chop and build in that area. One thing I noticed about tonight on the open, which I mentioned, is that above 35, you see a high volume blip, and then right about 36.75 or 36.50, you see another high volume blip. And I view that as an anomaly. It's not smooth. And so if we were to create a Gaussian curve on the session, it would be important for that to be smooth. However, that's in my order of priority, that's lower because I'm going to go with what's occurring right now against the LVNs and not going to look to clean up structure just because I feel it should be cleaned up.
Appreciate it. I know we got a bunch of people in the room, guys. Good opportunity to ask some questions on this. If anybody's got anything, you should be able to unmute. Looks like we got a question coming through chat. Where would you have gone long tonight? Just enter compo.
Okay, so future DT, Matt, based upon my plan pre-market, 35 was my area of interest. And if you look at 35, just above 35, we had that high volume build. And so with that high volume build, what I actually did tonight was I entered at market. And as I entered at market, then we got another blip up at 36.75 as it thrusted forward and continued to build higher volume above it. My risk was to the low of the night at that point. And so in entering above that, the reason I entered is because I'm looking at volume as interest, okay? With completely disregarding the DOM activity at that moment, which was full bid off the open, we had that volume build there, and it did not turn back. And so that's going to show me that the interest is not below that level, it's above. And so that was just a pre-planned positioning from the session to begin with. And so I view that as a session pivot. The session pivot takes less priority than weekly pivots and levels, but allows me on a smaller scale position in with respect to gauging direction into the weekly set.
I have no idea. Maybe 20, 30 minutes.
If I was wrong, my stop at that point was at the low of Globex, because what had happened was with the start of Globex, we had a blip down to the low, which was 34. We came up, we consolidated at 38. As soon as we did that, that's actually where I was in around 37. Seeing that high volume come in at 36.75, as soon as we came up above that, I was market in. And my risk was to the low of the night. I know I'm wrong if we build volume below that level.
Would you say it's almost like you're anticipating that, you mentioned or called it maybe a pivot, but it's almost like you were anticipating with that volume blip at the open and then kind of the blast through the anomaly and the build of volume above, that like that mini auction was complete and that it's really starting a new auction, and you've kind of left that previous one behind and gives you that buffer?
That's exactly what I'm looking at. And so how in the world am I viewing this? I'm viewing this as the inventory from the previous session. And so I'm looking at RTH, seeing where that's at and finding my particular area of interest. And so I did post that chart. Let me take a look at that and find out.
I'll pull it up and stream it for you as well.
It was off of a high volume edge just above the volume POC of RTH. If you can stream that, I had to screenshot a picture from a previous group, but you can see it's off a high volume edge above the POC from the RTH. And with that being said, it got into the auction above POC. So that was my pivot. We never really had any interest below that auction. And so that tells me that we want to test the auction above. Somebody mentioned, I'm bouncing around groups here, not familiar with it. Hold on. We are pulling back just a bit at 44.50. Would you take a LVN long or no because potential is limited? I think you mentioned no, but you can explain that risk again. Okay, so looking at this, it's if you miss or if you do not take an opportunity to enter a trade upon your parameters, then you are minimizing your probability of success. First off. So until 44.50 is wrong, it's right. At this point, what is wrong is 44, so we're talking about a half a point, okay? And so as this comes down to 44.50, do I feel that we should be getting long? Well, we're significantly above the current session pivot. There's a expectation to range, but also the profile is heavily weighted to the upside. And so if we get below that 44.50, I expect an auction down, but I will play that LVN until it no longer works. It may feed once, it may feed 7 times. But I at least know my risk. Yeah, do you understand what I mean with that? You have a defined risk. And for anybody who doesn't define their risk, if you know your risk, then there's no reason not to enter that trade. If you're somebody who removes your stop, then you're just asking for a beating. Yeah, so what I'd be looking for, first off, I'd be entering there, and I was putting my little one to sleep, so I did not have a second trade on the night. What I would be doing here would be entering against that LVN, and then what I want to see is I want to stay in that trade. I don't want to just be scalping this here right now. I want to be staying in that as close to that LVN as possible until it's either wrong or we build volume above 50. So looking at this profile, I want to see some volume continue to build. We don't have a taper at the top. And so if we can sit in that and allow that to be right above 44, then that it might take forever. I mean, I trade a lot of Globex, and sometimes it takes a long time. But I'll tell you that you're better off taking the opportunity when you see fit, rather than trying to place any trade in the middle because you're sitting down at your computer.
You bring up a good point about Globex, and obviously a long time. I'm assuming the volume is lower. Does that affect the profile in any way, or the way that the profile shapes?
You know, it's pretty much relative. So obviously the volume is less. The shape is going to be consistent to the percentage in which it shows on your screen. So if I have 1 million shares right now, it's not going to overlap a larger percentage of my screen than I have allotted. If I have 10,000 shares, it's going to show the same exact distribution. It might be less volume, but it'll be the same shape. Okay? And so I'm treating this in the same manner with respect to the session. And this is why
patterns are the same. Is basically what you're saying. The patterns are identical regardless of the scale of the volume.
Correct. Somebody asked, would I have taken a long at the close on Friday because it's hitting an LVN? No, because I'm not going to hold a position over the weekend on futures. I'm cash at the end of the day. And then the reason I have my daily pivots and daily levels is it allows me to position against my weekly plan. So there's a hierarchy in which I play this. If you're an options person, which I work with several people who do utilize options, they will take options in different positioning with that respect that are not same-day expiration, but they'll utilize that weekly plan to gauge their entries and exits. However, with futures, I'm not looking to sit in anything that goes against me.
I'll throw one more out there to you, but what about LVNs that sort of cover multiple days of a balance? Does that really just filter into your weekly viewpoint versus your day-to-day plan?
Yeah, so check this out. If you have multiple days that show the same LVNs, that's a clear area of rejection. And so that's a really good area to buy or sell against. And so I'm utilizing those as areas of lack of interest. If the price is above that LVN, we obviously want to be against that. And if price is below that, we want to be selling against that. We can have a low risk sell against it or buy against it based upon where price is with respect to that volume. That volume is simply as I view inventory. And leaving out activity that we might see DOM-wise or delta-wise. Price is going to move from areas of value to areas of value, correct? And so when we escape value, we're going to be seeking new value. And so that's important to note, that when we're above value, that we want to be not favoring lower value, being that we're auctioning above what was previously deemed as fair.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
No problem.
See if anybody else has anything real quick, guys. Joe, I really appreciate the time, man, and you jumping in. I know it was a little bit short notice.
I'm late. I missed that.
It was perfect timing. Perfect timing. Preston walked us through a really great absorption trade from a volume perspective this week that he took actually into the Friday close. But again, man, it's been a treat to have you sharing in the room, and obviously jump in here. I'm sure a bunch of questions will come through. I'm sure your DMs have been blowing up too, but we just appreciate you sharing. Yeah, and hopefully we can have you back. I'd love to know more about the what's the name of the curve that you're using to forecast? I got to go back and look. I got homework.
With the Gaussian curve?
Gaussian curve, yeah. That sounds like a more mathematical way to do it than I literally just try to predict. But if you want to maybe share on that before you go, that'd be cool.
Well,
too.
let's see here. Perhaps I can share a screen.
Yeah, if you want to give it a try, there's literally a green bottom says screen, and then when that pops up, here I'll stop sharing for a second. When that pops up, it's going to give you applications or screens. Let's see. So right now you've got blank screen, white screen.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to do my annotation here. Oh, man. Give me 1 second. I'm going to reshare this. Let me pull up a white screen that way I can draw. All right, everybody sees this, right? White screen?
Yep, we got you.
All right, so if that is price, this is a Gaussian profile. It's an even distribution with the high volume area at the center. All right? So if we're building a profile that looks something like this, I'd expect this to finish. You got me?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, this is what I envision. So this is called the Gaussian curve. That's that kind of perfect bell curve.
Yeah, it's bell curve. Yep. And so so the market itself is seeking this, and on lower levels, it's forming things like this, and like this, and it's coming back to fill this in. It's coming back to fill this in, and then this. You know what I mean?
So when you say resolution, you're speaking to the balance that we're currently in and your expectation of the market sort of bringing this particular balance or this particular profile to resolution, where there might be multiple profiles that still need repair on larger time frames across multiple balances.
Yeah, so when I talk about resolution, I'm talking about the week. And so I don't really, I'm not looking at a year chart. I'm not looking at a month chart or anything like that. I'm looking at the week profile, I'm looking at the session profile. That's it. Everything I trade is based off of that. And so when I look at the session or the week profile and it gives me something like this, I'm saying, okay, well, here to here is this distance, and it's going to resolve this distance to the upside. And if it doesn't, it will, but it may not be immediately. It doesn't have to be, but that's also why I place my things like, okay, well, here's my pivot. Below this, we can seek down here to resolve a previous one and then come back.
That was going to be my next question. What about, an unresolved and you leave them? Do you just kind of tag those as bring that information forward type thing?
Sure. So like 78, 3878 is unresolved from last week. And so that's an area I expect pause. If we can build anything above 60, I expect a significant pause around 78. Nobody knows exactly what the market's going to do, but that's kind of my expectation with that. But I certainly will not be shorting heavily above 32. And there may be people that you follow on Twitter that get in perfectly, like within 2 ticks of the high, and then short something, and it goes forever down. And I don't wish to do that because long term, that's not sustainable. How many times did they do that before it was right?
Makes sense. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm looking. I just pulled up the. It's a little bit bigger than just last week, but it's the balance from kind of this last session here. But it has that, whether you want to call it a buy imbalance or sell imbalance, whatever the version of it is you're looking at. But this is the resolution you're kind of speaking to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, and looking at that, we're looking for creation of the Gaussian curve. And we can see, and I tried to display multiple distributions on the current night itself, and you can see how there's anomalies in the lower auctions. And that's why we want to respect those LVNs along the way. If it auctions below 4450, we want to respect the fact that it can clean up or extend to the lower end of the previous auction and protect that. Or if it doesn't protect that, it's going to go to the lower end of the former auction. All right.
Absolutely.
When people ask me, do you want, with these levels, do I want a 5-minute close above the level? Do I want a 30-minute close? I want none of that. I want volume build above, and then I want protection of the LVN.
That's really good. Listen, man, I really, really appreciate you joining. I know I can probably speak for everybody in the room. It's just really great to have you. This was an awesome, we'll call it 101 to a look into Job's volume profile and the way that you're looking at markets. So again, just can't thank you enough for jumping on. I know it was a little last minute, but really appreciate your time, man.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody have a good night, okay?
Take care, man. All right, guys. I think we ran just about an hour. Let me just pull up the notes here and kind of see where we're at. But I think just a couple of touch points before we wrap it up. So again, amazing session here. I mean, we got Job's here on volume profile, Preston doing the live replay of an amazing trade. We've got a couple of different areas still to cover, anything that's not highlighted here from the notes. So imbalance, POC, order flow flip, volume clusters, or exhaustion. So if anybody's interested in sharing a trade that they have or just content that they'd like to share in any of those topics, that will kind of round out our series on volume imprint candles. Again, just shout out to everyone who's joining weekly. This is getting pretty big. Looks like we have 40, 50 people in here this week. I see the room sharing the stuff that's in here. If you just go into the search bar and you type bad auction, the amount of conversation just around bad auction and delta and trap traders and all the things that we've been studying is really cool to see that the room is profiting hopefully off of these ideas and people sharing in this room. So really cool. Let's see. I'll skip the king sell level bad auction, but that was a cool one. A double from last week. King had a sell level at 803. I posted it down here. This was why. Or I'm sorry, you guys can't see where I'm pointing, but I posted it in the chat room. King's Twitter cluster where he was seeing the trap traders. And then we had Preston's trade. Adjusting to market conditions. I'll carry this into next week, but just wanted to kind of talk about scaling in, scaling out, and how you can adjust. Been doing some studying on Jim Dalton's stuff and just some of his talk around and conversations around needing to be nimble as a trader, and certain requirements of markets will allow you to hunt for 10, 12 points, 20 points. These beautiful trades, but sometimes you just got to take 2, 3, 4, whatever the market's going to give you. Friday was one of those days with about a 20-ish point range, where with scaling in, scaling out, adding to winners, and really watching your trades on a different level than at least me personally had been doing, was able to still see a highly profitable day in very tight range. And then again, we just had Job share on volume profile. So really cool session here. Hopefully we got this one recorded. One more just ask on that. Let's see. I know TP was going to give it a try, but if somebody who is committed to kind of being here week in and week out would step up and be the person to help record and get these sessions uploaded. I know I get a lot of DMs about people can't make it because they're either on different time zones or whatever, that are hoping to get this information. And as we continue to have great guests like we did tonight and great content, definitely want to get this out to the group. But again, guys, thank you so much. Appreciate everybody coming out. Take care, and we'll see you guys Monday morning.
Thank you.